considering the magnitude of the phenomenon and the danger of the phenomenon, that we should go for less controls of counterfeit medicine. I'm not talking about generic, I'm talking about counterfeit fake medicine, dangerous drugs, because this is what your question is about. I think that the statistics that we see at customs showing the number of seizures, and you have unfortunately to assume that even if customs work very well, for each batch seized, there must be others to go through. And since you have an increasing trend, that it's a serious problem, and I don't think we should consider that the problem is already dealt with, and that we don't need more laws. This being said, again, we will not change the acquis on this, but we have a very strong acquis. We have very good legislation in Europe in that. You had another question on commercial scale, which is not defined. That is true, but you have to leave it to the wisdom of the judge. It's like good faith, you know. Often you have the concept of good faith or other concepts, legal concepts, which are not defined, because you cannot, in a law, plan for all cases. And we have that in Europe since many years. It's actually already from the TRIPS 94. Thanks. Other questions? Yes, Madam in green and gentleman in white shirt.
Yes, thank you very much. Your last mentioning this example, I'm Eva Lichtenberger from the Legal Committee in the European Parliament. The last thing that you mentioned about medicines, which is, serves also as an example for the general attempt there, you said that purely criminal procedures would be much too complicated and much too, let's say, late to really have prevention on it. But I mentioned there's a risk, not always the case, but there's a risk. That's right. But here we come to a critical point. What exactly do you want to change? Because now we are arguing on the base of suspect. So everything suspect then has to be followed from the beginning on. So I want you, please, to give me some legal information how you would jump over this hurdle of, let's say, suspect and criminal procedures. This is not really in accordance with the acquis.
Well, first of all, I mean, ACTA is not a legislation or a treaty about medicines. So, for instance, with the previous question, we can't just englobe everything there. It's about intellectual property, and it's about enforcement only, and not substantive, which means that any measures, for instance, that a customs officer would take, customs only detain temporarily, and then there has to be either the shipment is abandoned, which is often the case because, by definition, criminals don't exactly prosecute customs to get their shipment back, or you have a right holder, which is victim, which will have to prosecute it. And eventually it will be a judge, and not the customs, of course, who will decide whether it was counterfeit or not. Now, by contrast, criminal law is a totally different thing. And what I was saying is that if you have counterfeit medicine at the border, it might be better, or it might be an extra safety net, if you want, to stop them already then. And in the case of counterfeit medicine, they will be simply abandoned because these are manufactured in foreign countries in the back of a garage or something. And instead of having to wait, if you want, that there is case of poisoning, having to find the evidence, etc., etc. That's what I was saying. But the two instruments are totally different. But ACTA will not change, if you want, I don't know, what is needed to prosecute criminal case. It refers exclusively to intellectual property. So counterfeit medicine is medicine infringing trademark, and it will be stopped at the border. Will it require change in EU law? No, because in EU we already have all the instruments. We have procedures which allow right holders to register their product with the customs, etc. And it's for free. But all this doesn't exist in every country in the world. And this is what we're trying to achieve, that these instruments or these law which we see as efficient to the right holders are also available to our right holders in other countries. Thank you.
My name is Joe McNamee from the Association of NGOs European Digital Rights. I have one fairly easy question with a yes or no answer. The European Parliament adopted a text recently which calls on the Commission to continue the negotiations on ACTA and limit them to the existing European IPR enforcement system against counterfeiting. Will you limit them as the European Parliament proposed? I have two then more general questions. You said that nobody in ACTA is proposing a three strikes rule. However, in two of the leaks, it was quite clear that the aim was to lead ISPs to introduce policies such as cutting off subscribers. Were these leaks fakes or were they real? I'm particularly worried about this idea of leading ISPs to introduce these measures because the current draft Council conclusions on cybercrime support exactly this kind of self-regulatory filtering of content. And my final question is that in the EU, despite the acquis, we have growing problems with ISP liability, blocking of websites, filtering of websites, taking down of often legal sites in Europe. If we export this to other countries that don't have the protection of the European Convention on Human Rights, don't have a data protection directive, what on earth is this going to do with regard to our role for protection of the rule of law and human rights internationally? Thank you.
On the two first questions, the first question on the European Parliament resolution, and I suppose you're referring to the paragraph 8 of the resolution, which, as you can imagine, we have looked carefully. We will, as I've said, well, first of all, in the institutional system, the Commission has negotiating directives or guidelines which are given by the Council. And these are very clear about what I've said about respect of the acquis. So the answer is yes, we will respect the acquis. I'm sorry?
Sorry, the question was, will you respect what the Parliament asked for? Not
well,
will you respect the acquis?
If you allow me to answer what I want to answer, which is that we'll respect the acquis. If there was a resolution which would go beyond the acquis, would you like us to respect it as well? I suppose no. We have to be bound by, on one hand, our existing legislation, because the Commission is guardian of the treaties, and on the other hand, to our negotiating directives from the Council. So we will respect that. As your second question is regarding, I'm not sure I understood the details, but it was about leaks, and as a principle, as you can imagine, we don't comment on leaks. So I don't know which leak it was, but we don't comment on it. If you want the truth is here. It's what the presentation I've given. And if you have any questions on that, you're most welcome, but we will not comment on leaks. I'm not sure I understood the question on human rights, because as far as I know, it's absolutely not touched in ACTA, and as you can imagine, because in Europe, of course, we are a member not only of the Human Rights Convention, but we have a lot more statute to protect human rights, but also privacy and data protection, which goes further than strictly speaking human rights, torture, etc. We will respect that again, and absolutely, and it's mentioned specifically in our negotiating position that we're referring to that. Any other question? Yes.
Maurice Wessling from the Dutch Consumentenbond, Consumer Union. You have said that in the ACTA negotiations you will request for a disclosure of negotiating documents. What will the Commission do if this request is denied? And secondly, the European Parliament in its resolution has urged the Commission for a impact assessment on fundamental rights. When can we expect that assessment, and how will it be timed inside the ACTA negotiations?